Hi, Mark DeLuzio with another episode. This one is called Back to Basics. You could see Tayashi Ono standing there looking over a production line. And what I'm going to talk about is fundamentally the deviation I see today in lean, where so many people are working on things that perhaps can't be considered the framework of the original essence of lean, which is the Toyota production system. And this doesn't matter if you make cars, if you do insurance, fracking, oil and gas, it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, the basics apply to every single business. And so, what I want to do is take you through the Toyota production system and talk about the 5 elements that make up that system. All right. And you're going to find that many of the things that you're doing right now are not found on the original Toyota production system house. Now, remember, Lean got its name from a book called Machine That Changed the World. I wish they never named it Lean, but they did. I named my company after Lean. It got a lot of black eyes because of the abuse that a lot of CEOs have had by using Lean as a tool to take out headcount and then at the same time ask employees to engage in improvements, only to find that they would work themselves out of a job. So, um, back to basics is talking about the fundamentals of what we need to do to effectively transform a company with lean thinking. Okay. Now, as you see, Ono over here said, people don't go to Toyota to work; they go there to think, and they understood the value of the people. And at the end of the day, lean is not about machines. It's not about inventory. It's not about equipment. It's not about any of this stuff, products. It's about people. People are the ones that make it happen. Okay. So let's get into this and I'll talk a little bit more about that. I always start off with the Lean Trilogy. This is something I developed way back when. I have a white paper on it. Go to leanhorizons.com and you can download the white paper called the Lean Trilogy. But the Lean Trilogy is, in effect, a concept that says, hey, look, we have 3 major stakeholders. I know there's others. There's the environment, there's the community, and so forth. But these 3 stakeholders, employees, customers, and shareholders, all have to win. This cannot be a zero-sum game. Every one of these stakeholders needs to win. Now, we may argue, well, yeah, we do that in our company. Really? Do we really understand what the objectives are of our employees? What's in it for them? Do we really understand that? Or we just assume? Do we assume we know what our customers want? We think we do. Okay. But do we really, really know? Shareholders. Well, the obvious one there is, hey, look, shareholder return, right? But they want other things too from a company. Right. So you have to put processes in place to be able to understand, monitor, and make sure everybody wins. Okay. This cannot be a zero-sum game. I'm going to start with a guy named Vince Lombardi. If you're watching this from another country and don't understand our U.S. football, um, Vince Lombardi was one of the most famous coaches in history, and he took a really lousy Green Bay Packer team and won, I believe, 5 championships over the course of time. And how he did it was through fundamentals and basics. Okay, and on his first practice with the Green Bay Packers, where this team had a terrible losing season previously, he stood up with a football and said, "Gentlemen, this is a football." And he started from there on up. Okay. Now it's interesting. I've met a lot of CEOs who would tell me, Mark, come on, we don't need to learn that or this or that. We already know this stuff. Well, knowing it intellectually and being able to do it are 2 different things. And one of the things that I will tell you is that when we got schooled by the Japanese, the originators of the Toyota production system, they couldn't understand American mentality, where Americans all said, "Oh yeah, I know how to do that." then they go out and see, well, you're not doing it. So do you really know how to do it? Right. I remember having Nakao-san from Shingijutsu in. I wanted him to work on all kinds of other things. And he said, no, Deluzio-san, we need to work on standard work, which, by the way, I'm going to have an episode on in the future. But I will talk briefly about standard work today. But he said to me, Deluzio said, no, we need to work on standard work. I go, no, Nakao, come on. We need to work on TPM and SMED and some other things. Deluzio-san, no. I go, Nakao, I know standard work. I don't need to, go through that again. Deluzio-san, come with me. And we went down to look at one of my operating one-piece flow cells, and we had all of our standard work posted. And he said to me, how many people are on your standard work chart? I said 5. He goes, how many people in your cell? And I looked, and there were 8. He said, Deluzio-san, you do not know standard work. Okay. So avoid the trap of saying you know something when you can't demonstrate it. Okay. Okay. These are the 5 or 6 basics that I'm going to talk about. First, an overview of the Toyota production system, and then I'm going to go into each piece of the Toyota production system in a counterclockwise fashion, starting with just in time and moving through. Why am I doing it counterclockwise? Because if you know how to set up a cell, you want to do that counterclockwise for a lot of different reasons, which I won't go into right here. But that is the method I'm going to use. Okay. One of the things Ono said was, and I've heard this from my Japanese senseis who were mentored by Ono, was, hey, look, you can't cherry pick what you want to do with the Toyota production system. Do one part that's fun and not do the other things, right? So when you look at this, you say to yourself, well, I can't just do Jidoka or, any of these other features without putting this together as a comprehensive system. Okay. So keep that in mind. And by the way, this is a representation of the Toyota production system house that Ono developed way back when, in the 50s, I believe. So we're going to talk about just in time. Okay. Just in time is a concept that basically says we're going to produce a product or a service when it's needed, in the quantity that it's needed, and obviously the quality that's required. All right. How many of your businesses violate this principle? I see it all the time. All right. I see it just all the time when we buy in bulk from our suppliers because we're getting a quantity discount. That's a violation of just in time. Okay. This doesn't mean you have zero inventories. I mean, way back when, in the old days, when they were talking about just in time, what that really meant for most people was, hey, we're going to push back on our suppliers the inventory and let them hold it. Well, that doesn't do any good because you have the same fundamental problems with supply and quality and everything else just because you change the location as to who holds the inventory. Okay. So just in time does not mean zero inventories. In some cases, it means you need to put the right inventory in at the right spots to make sure that you're satisfying your customers' lead time requirements. And as you get better on your lead time, you could take that inventory down. All right. So there was a book written some years ago called Zero Inventories, which I think was a really misleading title because lean is not about zero inventories. It's about having the right amount of inventory where it is, where you need it in your whole network. All right. Taking inventory out of a company in its entirety, it's similar to like, hey, I'm going to drain your blood out of your body. You don't need your blood either, right? Maybe you lose 5 pounds. Doesn't work that way. Okay. Okay. High junker level scheduling. I'm not going to get a lot into this right now, but what I will say, and there's some math behind it and some techniques, but What level scheduling means is that, hey, look, you can't have a production facility or a service operation that's running to varying demand cycles without planning for those demand cycles. Okay, so you know everybody says, well, geez, our business is seasonal, like it's a new revelation. I don't think I've ever met one business that didn't have some sense of seasonality to it. So you're not unique in that respect. Okay. Um, Now, when you look at why do you want to level load? Well, let's bring it back to our personal lives. Let's say you have a family of four and you prepare dinner every night for a family of four. Well, that's pretty standard, right? Four plates, four sets of silverware. You kind of know how much food to cook. Yeah, the food may vary from night to night, but no big deal, right? Then all of a sudden on Wednesday night, 12 people are coming over. Big disruption. I don't have the room for them right now. I have to extend my table. We have to use the dining room. I need 12 plates. Geez, I only have 8. What am I going to do? That type of thing. How much do I cook? When do I start it? How do I prepare it? It's a big disruption. And then the next night you go back to 4. And a few days later you go to 8. Okay. You can't consistently work efficiently when you got that kind of variation. So, what hydruncle level scheduling says is we have to smooth our production plan. Now, this is a production control endeavor. It has to be a deliberate endeavor that says, hey, look, we're going to smooth our production plan and level load it over a given time horizon. Some companies that could be a month. If you have big OEM contracts and they're giving you a monthly schedule, well, you could do it relatively easily. You may not have that. Okay. So your time frame might be shorter. Maybe it's a week, but you've got to level load and set your standard work, which I'm going to talk about next, to that level loaded schedule. All right. So suffice it to say though that you've got to have some stability, and this is one of the problems with Kanban. A lot of people set up Kanbans with their supplier as the very first thing they do. In essence, it should be the last thing they do, because if you're not sending level loaded signals to your supplier, you're going to cause as much chaos with your supply base by having a varying daily schedule than you will your own your internal operations. So Hajunka is key to stabilize to some degree and take out the unevenness, which is Mura, and of course, waste and all the wasteful movements that go along with this, which is called Muda. Okay. Standard work. This is one I think that is perhaps the most troubling to me. So many companies do not do standard work, and the excuses I get are mind boggling. But what is standard work? Standard work is to document the one best way to do a particular task, to put a product together, to process an invoice, the one best way. Is it the most perfect way? Absolutely not. But it's the one best way that we know now. Okay. My friend Nikao, my mentor in Sensei, said to me way back when, many moons ago, if you don't understand standard work, you do not understand the Toyota production system. It's as simple as that. So many people don't do standard work, but they have all the other trappings of what they might call lean. So let's look at standard work. And here's the analogy I want to make. It applies to repetitive processes in manufacturing and administration. For example, if you're processing an invoice or a purchase order, okay, on the admin side, of course, production would be product. So I want you to think about this based on people, process layout, instructions, and rhythm. I'll get to that in a minute. In a manufacturing environment, we have operators, or in admin, we have office workers. If you look at an orchestra, who are our operators? Our operators are the musicians, right? The people playing the instruments. All right, now we have a layout. How are we going to lay this out? Well, you can see the manufacturing flow cell. You can see an office flow. And you're going to see the instrument layout in an orchestra. I'm going to put all the percussion together and all the flutes and all the woodwinds and whatever, right? Well, I guess flute is a woodwind, but you get the idea, right? So you lay that out. So now we have our cell design as it relates to the orchestra. Now let's start with the orchestra. What do they have? Sheet music. Everybody's playing the same set of notes to come back with one unified sound. Here's where we go wrong. We don't put standard work in when we lay out a cell. We provide the operators no sheet music. Standard work documentation is the sheet music to a manufacturing cell or an office cell. Well, how can we get beautiful music out of these cells if I don't have sheet music? No different than an orchestra, right? Now, the conductor provides the beat, and this is what we call takt time. Takt time is a German word that means beat or rhythm, okay? And what it basically means is how often do I have to produce a product to meet my customer demand? So if I told you that your takt time is 90 seconds, that means that manufacturing cell has to produce a product every 90 seconds based on the level loaded schedule that was provided to them. Okay. That also means any one operator can't have a work sequence greater than 90 seconds. That means a machine can't run longer than 90 seconds, and that includes the load and unload time. Okay. Otherwise, you're going to not have a drop off rate of your takt time, which in this case was 90 seconds. Okay. So think about this. How many times have we set up manufacturing cells with no standard work? And we're wondering, oh, geez, how come we're not getting the production out today? Out of 12 operators, one operator could be over takt time, and that could be the reason, right? Because that one operator, instead of operating at 90 seconds, is operating at, let's say, 120. Well, your drop off rate out of that cell is going to be 120. All right. So it's simple math. Okay. But this is where we miss it quite often when I talk about basics. Okay. Now, these are the three elements of standard work. I explained takt time already. Okay. How often a part should be produced based on the rate of sales or demand. Work sequence. What is the actual work sequence for the operator? Okay. And I'll get more into this in the standard work module that I'm going to be doing. And the designated amount of imagery that you need to allow the operators to continue is called standard work in process. All right. So if I leave a part in a machine and walk away from it while it's cycling to do something else, that part in the machine is called standard work in process. We also use this for what we call a curtain effect, where we have ovens and curing operations, drying operations, those kind of operations. Okay, last but not least, let's talk here. Well, talk about Kaizen on the bottom of the house. Kaizen means change for the good. Japanese word means change for the good. Kaizen also refers to an event. Okay. Now, when you actually look at Kaizen, it's a mindset first that basically says anything I do today, I could do better tomorrow. All right. So I call it a healthy dissatisfaction with the status quo. That's what we're looking at here. Okay. A healthy dissatisfaction with the status quo. All right. So we'll celebrate on Friday because we made some really great changes to a Kaizen event. But we come back on Monday, guess what? We're going to be a little bit upset and anxious to be able to make that next set of improvements. Okay. So what is the Kaizen event? Okay. It's a mindset again. It's an event. It is a calculated event. Now, one of the things I see is that people say, yeah, we don't really do Kaizen because we don't have time. We're working 60 hours a week and we got a lot of problems. Kaizen is like going to the gym. You want to be Mr. Universe? Arnold Schwarzenegger didn't do Kaizen at the gym. He never would have became Mr. Universe. Okay. I don't understand how you can say you've been doing lean if you don't do any Kaizen, right? And people tell me, well, Mark, and I had this told to me before, We have to get our problems fixed first before we do standard work or Kaizen. Okay. And I'm like, well, you've been here for how many years now? What's going to be different tomorrow? Standard work and Kaizen are the ways to get better. One thing Ono said about standard work, which I should have mentioned, was there can be no improvement without a standard. What are you improving? If you don't hold a standard and say, okay, well, here's the one best way that we observed, we can't always hit that because we got problems. What I want to do is I want to prioritize those problems and go after the biggest opportunities first. And it's not always a cost issue. Could be quality, could be safety. Okay. I know a lot of systems try to prioritize all this on cost, and it's not the right way to go, in my opinion. Cost is an outcome of doing the other things right. So we prioritize those differences and those issues as to why we can't hit our standard, and we do that through Kaizen events and go after those items and those issues so that we can come closer to be more sustainable, hitting that standard that we said we need to adhere to. Okay. There's no way you can make improvements. And companies, I see this all the time. We want our people to improve. We're doing lean. Well, how come we're not making improvements? Well, because you're not doing Kaizen. You're not giving operators time. You're not asking them for their opinion. You're not giving them the training or the resources necessary to make change. It's as simple as that. So it's not going to happen through osmosis, but Kaizen has to happen if you want to say you're truly doing lean. Okay. And as I just mentioned, where there's no standard, there can be no improvement, no Kaizen. That came right from the mouth of Takeshi Ono. Okay. Think about it, by the way. What are you changing if you don't have a standard? Okay. What exactly are you changing? Am I changing what's in five people's heads? Which I can guarantee you are going to be five different things. Okay. So you've got to have a standard to adhere to say, okay, we need to either change the standard because it's not giving us the outcome, or work on the things that aren't allowing us to achieve the standard. Okay. By the way, I'd say 95, 96% of the time, it's not a people problem, guys. It's a process problem. So many people want to look at the operators. Hey, how come I got an email the other day. How come we have such variation? What should we do with our people? Our second shift doesn't perform like first shift. And on first shift, the operators are all different in terms of their performance. I can't believe it's solely the operators. Matter of fact, I'd shy away from that one and say, well, let me look at your process. Your process should be able to provide you with the ability to have some consistency and stability. If it doesn't, you need to Kaizen the process. 99 times out of 100, it's that. Okay. It's a process issue, not a people issue. Now, if we're not training people to run the standard, well, that's a process issue too. It has to do with our whole training regimen and process, right? So you can't expect change if you don't give people the time in which to do it, along with the training and the resources and all that. All right. Fujio Cho, the former chairman, said many good companies try to practice Kaizen and use all the various TPS tools. But what is important is having all elements together. Now, this is what Ono referred to earlier. Okay. Practice every day in consistent manner, not in spurts, but in a concrete way on the shop floor. Now, knowing normal from abnormal right now. So what do we consider abnormal? Did we set up a rework department because we have a lot of rework, and then we now internalize that as a normal thing to do? And should we spend a lot of time getting better at doing rework? Absolutely not. We need to figure out how to eliminate rework. Okay. That's the key here. Now, when you do Kaizen, if you continue to change, you're going to get this bar on the bottom, the red line that is, you're not going to stabilize it all. Once you do a Kaizen, you have to do a design freeze and then go into running it. And discipline is required to stay on that standard. Okay. Now, along the way, we're going to collect data that says, hey, you know what? On Tuesday, we couldn't hit that standard. And on Wednesday, we couldn't hit it. And when we kind of look back, we find out that our number one issue happens to be machine downtime. Okay. Let's figure that out. Do we have a good TPM process in place? Should we do a TPM Kaizen? Which machines are they? You know? So, or maybe we have a quality problem or a supplier availability issue. Could be a number of things, right? So once we stabilize and collect the data that tells us why we can't hit our standard consistently, those that will invoke future Kaizens. So without that stabilization part of the equation, you're never going to really make meaningful change. And by the way, I've had companies tell me, you know, we need to get our engagement up first before we do Kaizen. Well, guess what? This chart here is an actual study. It's kind of dated, but it's still relevant. That says the attitude towards all these things on the left, supervision and career and job satisfaction and customer, all are more favorably related the more people are involved in Kaizen events. Okay. It goes up, as you can see, from a negative position to a very positive position. So you want engagement? Do Kaizen. Ask people about their ideas, ask people to be involved. And by the way, if you're not going to guarantee a no layoff policy because of lean improvements, then you might as well just forget it. Okay, that's going to be a train wreck, and it's not going to work. Okay, I mean, think about it. Would you want to sign up for a Kaizen team? And let's say your department has 20 people in it, and you figure out after your Kaizen activities that you only need 14. Now, 6 people are walked out the door. What's the wisdom in anybody signing up for the next Kaizen event? And I can guarantee you, if that happens, people will find a way to preserve their job and get overtime, and you will never know what hit you. Okay. So no layoff policy due to lean improvements is an imperative, in my opinion. But so many people are reluctant to do it. Okay. Jidoka is the last one. I won't spend a lot of time on this, but basically, this all started in Toyota automatic looms before they made cars. And the fabric was in the loom would continue to operate if a thread broke. And you'd have piles and piles of yards and yards of material with a nice big defect running through it. So the Jidoka is all about stopping the machine when it detects a defect. And it's a respect for people issue, too, because we don't want people to stand there watching machines. Just like at home, you would not stand there and watch your clothes dryer dry the clothes. You're going to move away and do something else. It's disrespectful to have an operator spend their time doing that. Okay. So Jojoka has a lot more far reaching implications than just quality. It's all about respect for people as well. Okay. There's no direct translation to this. So we kind of call it automation with a human touch. Sometimes they call it automation. I have no idea what that word means, but that's sometimes what they call it. But there's no direct translation here. Okay. So you want to talk about error proofing? You got pokeyoke. Pokeyoke means mistake proof. I can't make a mistake. For example, I can't lock my keys in my car the way it's designed today. In the old days, you could, right? I can't lock my keys in my car because they pokeyoked that. I can't put a plug into a wall outlet incorrectly. It won't let me. Okay. So we want to be able to build into the process and into our products how we can have mistake proofing operations where you can't make a mistake. Jidoka, of course, it will The machine or the process will stop when it detects a defect. And there's all kinds of ways to do that, by the way, with IoT devices and gauging and all kinds of other things. But at that point, one piece at least has been defective. Okay. It didn't catch it all, but you're stopping the bleeding. Okay. So you could see, look at automatic sinks in public restrooms. They shut off automatically, so you can't leave the water running and flooding the place, right? So these are the kind of things we see in our daily life. You can't go put in a wrong credit card in Amazon. It does a computer check right there to see whether or not the card is valid, or if you missed a digit. Okay, so that kind of thing. All right. So, how did you build quality into your processes? And more importantly, perhaps, is how did you build it into your design? That's another key there, right? Okay. I'm going to end here and basically say, hey, look, go back to basics. It worked for Vince Lombardi. It worked for all the companies I know of. There's no silver bullets in lean. Our consulting industry that I'm in is probably the worst enemy that you have, from the respect that everybody wants to become the next Tayashi Ono. They want to become the next Deming or Duran or Shingo. And they're all coming up with all these new silver bullet conventions. And I'm here to tell you that there is no silver bullet. There's no quick fix. This isn't like a refrigerator at Home Depot where you bring it home, plug it in, and 20 minutes later you have cold drinks. It doesn't work that way. But everybody looks for that magic elixir. They all look for this call it the Amazon mentality, where they want things done yesterday. Okay, and that doesn't exist. There's no quick fixes. So you'll see things like, all these consultants coming out with all these different conventions. They'll come out with kata. They'll come out with the Gemba boards and Gemba walks and all this stuff, but they're not doing the fundamental stuff we're talking about here. So all that stuff is useless if we don't do the basics. Okay. So remember Vince Lombardi, and remember how successful he was. They named the Super Bowl trophy after him, called the Lombardi Trophy. Okay. And remember that you are, some of the stuff isn't really, sexy, if you will, but it works. It really does work. Okay. I talk about some of the stuff in my book, Flatline. Again, I get, why I named it Flatline was I get calls from CEOs saying, hey, Mark, we've been doing lean for 10 years and we flatlined. This book talks about the reasons why people flatlined. It is industry agnostic, because the phenomena I talk about in this book happen everywhere. It doesn't matter what the industry is. Okay. So I saw so much commonality, I thought I'd write a book about it. Say, hey, look, here are the things as to why we fail. But unlike a lot of books, I'm going to tell you what to do about it. Okay. So my contact details are there if you have any questions. And I do appreciate your time. And I hope you can all get back to basics. Thanks.